Glad to have you along. We are joined as always by Greg Engert, beer director for the Neighborhood Restaurant Group, which includes such places as Vermilion in Old Town, also Planet Wine in the Del Rey neighborhood. Greg, a food and wine sommelier of the year. What is on tap this week?
So on tap this week is a relatively new brewery to the area, Boulevard Brewing Company, which has been around since 1988 or 89 in Kansas City, Missouri. They are a large craft brewer that makes phenomenal beers, and we are lucky to finally have them consistently in DC, Northern Virginia region as well. And so Boulevard started by John McDonald back in the late 80s, as I mentioned. Their brewmaster is Belgian. His name is Stephen Powell's. And so they make a host of wonderful, refreshing beers. You know, the unfiltered wheat is a classic among its style, but also great Belgian-inspired beers. And this is probably the most famous of all. This is Tank 7. This is a Saison, a Farmhouse Ale.
Great color.
Delicious beer that is actually hopped with some nice American hops. So it's a little bit of Amarillo, gives it a kind of orangey, grapefruity quality in the nose. But the yeast strain is huge here. The yeast is what's producing all of these wonderful peppery, grassy, slightly piney aromatics. There's a hint of vanilla sweetness. And then it's nicely dry, never overwhelmingly bitter, but there's a cool interplay between the residual sweetness
It's real nice.
and the drying hop characteristics in the finish. And it's called Tank 7 because obviously craft brewers have lots of equipment, and this includes lots of different fermenters. So they had fermentation tank number 7 was one that always kind of gave them some issues when they were fermenting in it. And so apparently they kind of tried to steer clear of that fermenter whenever they could, just because things just didn't seem to work exactly as they wanted them to in there. That is until they played around with this beer, and that tank created amazing flavors that they've then been able to replicate in other tanks throughout. So they decided to pay homage to the once kind of despised fermenter, Tank 7, because of what it's done for this awesome beer.
And they conquered it.
They conquered
and
very
now
well.
They love it.
Yeah,
it's really
great.
refreshing. Good for summer weather, yeah?
Summertime beer, exactly. It's great. It's, you know, there are some craft beer people who just think that Belgian beers all are just kind of fruity and spicy and a little bit sweet. This has a wonderfully complex aromatic. You get some hop character and a dryness to it that makes you want more. It's very appetizing. It's very, I don't know, it's almost like salivating, you know?
I'm probably off my rocker, but I think that this would be good with a bacon cheeseburger.
Oh, it'd be great with that. It would, and that's a cool. I mean, I was thinking, you know, bacon cheeseburgers. I was thinking of like just like a grilled chicken sandwich with like lettuce, tomato, and mayo, some red onion. You know, just enough hop character to liven it up, to dig into the richness of the meat, but then just beautiful sweetness to balance the salt of the bacon and the cheeseburger. All sorts of, you know, pork preparations too would be great. Like you could do this with pork chops, you could do it with pork tenderloin, you name it. But also like roasted chicken, herbs and spices and things like that.
You know, there have been a lot of great craft breweries for a long time, 20 years on, and but we're starting to, but you would have to go to them.
Yeah.
And now, as you mentioned, they're coming to us more and more. That is obviously good for us, the beer lover, but it's got to be, it's just good all the way around, isn't it? It's good for
wonderful.
The brewery too.
Oh, yeah, totally.
It's a great cycle, and
they're able to grow. They're providing more jobs. You know, I mean, it's amazing. But the cool thing is, you got to remember, it's like Boulevard. They make a lot of beer. Why haven't they come before? Because they wanted to make sure they had the beer. They don't want to come to market and run out in 2 weeks. They come to market so that they can supply. So when you see Tank 7, you like it, you can get it. You don't have to wait 6 months for it to come back. That was an error that some craft brewers made in the early days, to kind of spread themselves too thin and then had to pull back out of markets. Now there's a much more careful, kind of studied approach to how expansions occur. And so yeah, you're right, like think about some of these breweries like Sierra Nevada, we've had them for a long time. And they've made lots of beers and they supply their markets very well and they make phenomenal beers. Same with Boston Beer, Sam Adams, things like that. New Belgium took its time to get here because they were recent to the area. Great Lakes took its time to get here. You know, Great Lakes and Boulevard both came about at the end of the 80s, you know what I mean? And really known regionally. I know when you go to Cleveland, you would make sure to get some, to drink it there and bring some back when you could, you know? So it's cool it comes here now and we're able to get it. And even cooler, I think, is some of these bigger breweries. I mentioned Asheville a couple weeks ago. Asheville not only has its own local brewing scene, there's 60 breweries in North Carolina, 11 in Asheville. Well, now the East Coast outposts so to speak, for New Belgian Brewing Company and Sierra Nevada and Oscar Blues are all going to be building their own second brew house in the greater Asheville area. And so they'll be able to expand not just locally, but also on the East Coast. So now the beer we get from those 3 breweries is going to be even fresher than it was before. And they're going to be bringing new jobs and a new influx of money to the community in Asheville.
How far of a drive is it to Asheville? It just popped in my head so I can start thinking about a trip.
I fly down there, but I think it's maybe 6 hours, I want to say.
That's not bad.
It's not too bad.
Or probably a pretty cheap flight, too, because it's
a
short
and
flight.
Actually, I mean, the cool thing about the flights there is you can fly into Greenville in South Carolina and then drive. Because the thing about going to Asheville is you want to be able to drive, because it's just the most amazing thing in the Blue Ridge Mountain Range. It's just so gorgeous around the area. So
we've talked before, and I think some people are surprised to learn this, that the Belgians are big fans of American craft beer, but what do they think about trying a beer like this? I mean, there must be a certain amount of, you appreciate that someone's taken the time and that they have been inspired by your country's styles of beer.
Right.
Are they pretty impressed by what's being made here? Or?
Yeah, they are now. I think actually before they might not have been. I think the old story used to be when the American hop scene was really growing and IPAs and pale ales and stuff. Belgian brewers, first of all, it's a misnomer to think that Belgian beer is supposedly sweet traditionally. They like hops, they just integrate the hops, so it's dry without being too bitter. And I know that there are definitely brewers, really well-known and fantastic brewers in Belgium, who looked originally upon IPAs and pale ales as being not beer. Unbalanced, too hoppy, too bitter, blah, blah, blah. But recently, I think there's been a little bit of a revolution going on. First of all, you have younger brewers in the scene coming up. They're inspired as much by American beers as they are by their own, so that you'll see more and more hops coming into beers more intensely. I mean, look at like the Durank brewers. They hop the hell out of their beers, and they're great. So I think it's changing, and there's much more of a collaborative effort. You're seeing more beers being collaborated upon between Belgian and American brewers. You're seeing more hops in the Belgian beers as you're seeing more Belgian styles. Kind of imitated, but also innovated upon stateside.
And my guess is over the past 10 or however many years that more Belgian beers and more Belgian styles are being made available over here. I mean, if you want a non-sweet Belgian beer, try a Malheur 10.
Yeah.
I mean, that is
very dry.
Dynamite beer, but it's not sweet at all.
No, it's not, and that's the difference. But then again, you do have the kind of more ubiquitous Belgian styles that all do kind of taste kind of sweet and fruity and the same. But there's a lot more, and actually, Belgium's the size of Maryland, and they have 140 breweries there, so that's pretty impressive. And a lot of that is because of the export market. So we've seen a lot of their beers. What I think is most exciting now is the new breed of Belgian brewers that are, as they remind us more of the kind of new breed of American brewers. They're much less stylistically attached to tradition. More hops, lots of local ingredients are finding their ways into these beers. Lots more sour beers are being produced, and we're seeing great collaborations occurring between these brewers as well.
All right, got a question about Belgian beer? Any type of beer? A beer road trip? The man can answer your questions. Ask Greg at, this is the email address, beeroftheweek@WTOP.com. Greg, thank you as always.
Awesome.
Try to stay cool in this weather.
Yeah.
Please do drink responsibly always, everyone, and be sure to bring your thirst next time for another Beer of the Week.